The arrival. A man walks into the most dangerous environment imaginable, where violence is currency and fear rules every corner. Everyone expects him to crumble under the pressure of institutionalized brutality. But what happens when someone refuses to play by the established rules of intimidation? Get ready for a story that will challenge everything you believe about strength, courage, and human resilience. If you're facing your own impossible situation, hit that subscribe button. This journey will show you that transformation begins from within. The steel door clanged shut behind Marcus Webb with a finality that made lesser men's hearts stop. 20 years of military discipline had taught him many things, but nothing quite prepared anyone for their first day in Riverbend State Penitentiary. The intake officer, a weathered man with eyes that had seen every variety of human behavior, processed Marcus with mechanical efficiency. "Keep your head down," the officer muttered, sliding a bundle of prison blues across the counter. "Especially around Donnie Rourke. He runs C Block." Marcus nodded once, his expression neutral. At 42, with graying temples and crow's feet etched deep from years spent squinting at desert horizons, he carried himself with an economy of movement that suggested careful consideration preceded every action. His hands, scarred from 1,000 training exercises, accepted the clothing without trembling. The walk to C Block took 7 minutes. Marcus counted each step, a meditative practice he'd developed during deployments when controlling one's mental state meant survival. Other inmates watched his progression through the corridors with predatory interest. New meat always drew attention. C Block smelled of industrial cleaner, sweat, and something indefinable. Perhaps hopelessness, perhaps rage. Marcus was assigned to cell 247 upper tier. His cellmate, a wiry man in his 30s named Jefferson, offered a cautious nod. "You military?" Jefferson asked, observing how Marcus arranged his few possessions with precise geometric placement. "Was. That might help, might not." Jefferson settled onto his bunk. "Work doesn't care about what you were outside, only what you are here." Through the cell bars, Marcus could see the common area below. Men moved in carefully choreographed patterns, respecting invisible boundaries. At the center of the largest table sat a mountain of a man, 6'5", 280 pounds of prison-hardened muscle. Donnie Rourke held court like a feudal lord, surrounded by lieutenants who laughed too loudly at his pronouncements. Marcus watched without appearing to watch, a skill refined through years of reconnaissance. He noted the power structure, the subtle gestures of submission, the way certain inmates averted their eyes. Rourke's dominance was total, maintained through strategic violence and psychological warfare. "How long has he been running things?" Marcus asked quietly. Jefferson glanced nervously toward the common area. 8 years. 3 people tried challenging him. All 3 ended up in the infirmary. One never came back to T-Block. Marcus said nothing. He simply continued unpacking, each movement deliberate and calm. Tomorrow would be his first day in general population. Tomorrow, he would begin observing what others missed, the observation. When everyone else sees chaos, what does a trained observer see? Patterns, vulnerabilities, opportunities not for conquest, but for understanding. What Marcus discovered in his first week would become the foundation for something unprecedented. Stay with us. Subscribe now, because this chapter reveals the strategic thinking that separates those who survive from those who transform their circumstances. Marcus's first morning in general population began at 6 a.m. with the grinding sound of cell doors opening simultaneously. Jefferson had warned him the night before, "Don't make eye contact with Rourke. Don't sit in the wrong area. Don't do anything that could be interpreted as disrespect." The cafeteria operated under an invisible caste system. Rourke's table commanded the best position, near the windows, farthest from the guard station. Marcus collected his tray of institutional breakfast and found a seat at the periphery where the unclaimed men gathered, those without protection, without affiliation. For 7 days, Marcus maintained this pattern. He spoke little, observed constantly. He noticed how Rourke's power rested not merely on physical intimidation, but on a sophisticated network of debts, favors, and manufactured dependencies. Cigarettes, contraband phones, protection, all flowed through Rourke's organization. But Marcus also noticed the cracks. Rourke's temper, legendary and explosive, made him unpredictable. His lieutenants feared him almost as much as everyone else did. There was no loyalty, only fear. And fear, Marcus knew from military experience, made organizations brittle. On the 8th day, Marcus broke his routine. During afternoon recreation in the yard, he positioned himself near the basketball court where Rourke typically held audiences. The prison bully was berating a young inmate, maybe 22, who'd apparently failed to pay back some undefined debt. "You think you can disrespect me?" Rourke's voice carried across the yard. "You think there are no consequences?" The young man trembled, tears cutting tracks down his face. "I'm trying, Donnie. I just need more time." Rourke's hand shot out, gripping the young man's throat. Guards in the tower shifted but didn't intervene. This was the ecosystem they tacitly permitted to exist. Marcus stood. Jefferson, nearby, hissed urgently, "Don't!" But Marcus walked forward anyway, his pace unhurried. 30 feet, 20, 10. He stopped just outside Rourke's immediate circle. The prison bully's lieutenants tensed, sensing irregularity. "Excuse me," Marcus said, his tone conversational. "I couldn't help noticing you have a leadership challenge." Rourke released the young man, who collapsed, gasping. The prison bully turned slowly, his eyes narrowing as he assessed this interruption. 6'5" looked down at Marcus's 5'11" frame. "Do I know you?" Rourke's question came out soft, dangerous. "Not yet," Marcus replied. "But I think you're making a strategic error. Debt collection through terror creates short-term compliance but long-term instability. I've seen entire command structures collapse using your methodology." The yard fell silent. Men stopped their activities, sensing something unprecedented unfolding. Rourke's face flushed. "Command structures? You think this is the fucking army, old man?" "No," Marcus said calmly. "This is more complicated than the army, which is why your approach interests me from a strategic perspective." For 3 heartbeats, Rourke stared. Then he began laughing, a sound without humor. "You got balls, stupid, but balls." He stepped closer. "You just volunteered for an education." Marcus didn't retreat. "I'm always open to learning, the challenge." What drives someone to step forward when every instinct screams to stay silent? When does observation transform into intervention? The moment Marcus challenged the established order, he set forces in motion that would test everything he'd learned about courage, strategy, and human nature. Don't miss what happens next. Hit subscribe because this chapter will make you reconsider what true bravery looks like. The challenge came at dinner that same evening. Marcus understood it would. Rourke couldn't allow public questioning to stand unanswered without appearing weak. The prison's social order demanded response. Marcus sat at his usual peripheral table when 3 of Rourke's lieutenants approached. The largest, a man called Grinder, carried himself with the swagger of someone accustomed to intimidation working. "Rourke wants to see you," Grinder announced. "Says you need to apologize for disrespecting him in the yard." Marcus finished chewing his food methodically. He swallowed, took a drink of water, then looked up. "Tell Mr. Rourke I'll speak with him after I finish eating. I'm available for conversation, but not for performing apologies I don't owe." Grinder's face darkened. "You don't get it, old man. This ain't a request." "Everything is a request," Marcus replied calmly. "It's just that some requests come with implied consequences. I understand the consequences. My answer remains the same." Jefferson, sitting beside Marcus, looked like he might faint. Around them, the cafeteria's noise had diminished as other inmates tuned into the confrontation. Grinder reached for Marcus's tray, clearly intending to escalate. Marcus's hand moved with unexpected speed, gripping Grinder's wrist before it reached the tray. The lieutenant froze, surprised by the firmness of the grip and the complete absence of aggression in Marcus's eyes. "I'm going to finish my meal," Marcus said quietly. "Then I'll walk over to Mr. Rourke's table and we'll have a conversation. You can either wait respectfully or return to your dinner. Your choice." For 5 seconds, Grinder struggled internally. Then, perhaps sensing something unfamiliar in Marcus's unwavering calm, he pulled his hand back. 10 minutes, he muttered, retreating with his companions. Jefferson whispered urgently, "Marcus, what are you doing? He's going to kill you." "Probably not," Marcus replied, resuming his meal. Killing draws too much attention. He'll want to establish dominance through public humiliation or controlled violence. That gives me options. Options? Marcus, this isn't a game. No, Marcus agreed. It's much more important than a game, which is precisely why I need to finish my protein. Confrontations require energy. True to his word, exactly 10 minutes later, Marcus stood. He walked across the cafeteria with that same measured pace, navigating between tables until he reached Rourke's domain. The prison bully sat surrounded by his inner circle, watching Marcus's approach with predatory interest. You came, Rourke said. Smart. You invited conversation, Marcus replied, stopping a respectful distance away. I accept invitations when they're genuine. Rourke's smile didn't reach his eyes. Here's the conversation, old man. Tomorrow, recreation time, you and me. Boxing ring, you apologize publicly, or I teach you why people respect me. Marcus considered this. A fight would certainly clarify our relationship, but before I agree, may I ask what you hope to accomplish beyond reasserting dominance? The question clearly caught Rourke off guard. What? You've controlled C Block for 8 years. Your position is secure. Fighting me risks nothing for you, but gains nothing either. I'm curious about your strategic objective. Rourke leaned forward. My objective is putting you in your place. An emotional objective, Marcus observed. Those are the dangerous kind. They lead to errors. He paused. I'll accept your challenge on one condition. The cafeteria held its collective breath. If I last 3 rounds without being knocked down, Marcus continued, you agree to answer 3 questions I have about leadership dynamics, honestly. Rourke stared, then laughed incredulously. You're bargaining? With me? Always negotiate, Marcus said simply, even when you hold the weaker position. The preparation. How does someone prepare for overwhelming odds? What internal resources can be summoned when external advantages seem non-existent? Marcus's approach to the impossible challenge would reveal principles that transcend prison walls. Subscribe now because understanding his preparation will change how you face your own battles. That night, Cell 247 became a classroom in strategic thinking. Jefferson paced nervously while Marcus performed a series of stretches on the concrete floor. Each movement flowed into the next with practiced precision, yoga positions modified for the confined space, breathing exercises designed to lower heart rate and increase oxygen efficiency. You can't beat him, Jefferson said, for perhaps the 10th time. Marcus, Rourke was a Golden Gloves boxer before he came here. He's 40 pounds heavier. He's younger. This is suicide. Marcus transitioned into a plank position, holding it with remarkable steadiness for a man his age. Tell me about the fights you've seen Rourke win. Jefferson blinked at the question. What? His previous challenges. Walk me through them. Details matter. Still confused but willing to help, Jefferson began recounting. There was Thompson, maybe 3 years back. Big guy, thought he could take Rourke. Lasted maybe 90 seconds. Rourke just overwhelmed him with power. Then there was Valdez, tried using speed, but Rourke caught him eventually. Broke 2 ribs. Marcus lowered himself from the plank, sitting cross-legged. Did any of them have strategy beyond trying to win? Strategy, Marcus? In a prison fight, you either win or you lose. There's always more, Marcus interrupted gently. Thompson wanted to win through power. Valdez through speed. Both accepted the premise that victory meant defeating Rourke. What if victory means something different? Jefferson frowned. You're talking in riddles. I'm talking about objective definition. Marcus leaned against the cell wall. I told Rourke if I last 3 rounds without being knocked down, he answers 3 questions. I didn't say anything about winning the fight. Understanding slowly dawned on Jefferson's face. You're not trying to beat him, you're trying to survive. More than survive, I'm trying to demonstrate something. Marcus closed his eyes, visualizing. For 8 years, everyone who challenged Rourke accepted his framework. Dominance through superior violence. They tried to beat him at his own game. That's why they failed. So what's your framework? Endurance? Adaptation? Remaining upright while being hit is its own form of power. Every second I stand is a second Rourke's absolute dominance is questioned. Marcus opened his eyes. In the military, we called it mission redefinition. If you can't win the battle they're fighting, fight a different battle entirely. Jefferson sat on his bunk, processing. And the three questions? The real objective, Marcus confirmed, understanding how Rourke maintains power reveals how power can be transformed. I'm not interested in replacing him. I'm interested in changing the system that makes someone like him necessary. That's ambitious for someone about to get his ass kicked. Marcus smiled slightly, the first genuine smile Jefferson had seen. The beating is temporary. What I learned could be permanent. They talked deep into the night. Marcus asked detailed questions about Block's social dynamics, the guards' intervention thresholds, the commissary economy, who held informal influence beyond Rourke's organization. Jefferson, initially bewildered, found himself becoming engaged in the analysis. You see the prison like a puzzle, Jefferson observed. Everything is a puzzle, Marcus replied. Most people just accept the picture on the box without questioning whether the pieces might create something different. At lights out, Marcus performed one final breathing exercise. His body would be tested tomorrow. He needed his mind sharp, his emotions steady. Fear was natural, panic was the enemy. Jefferson's voice came from the darkness. Marcus, why are you really doing this? Marcus considered the question carefully. That young man Rourke was choking in the yard. He reminded me of someone I couldn't help once, a long time ago. Maybe I'm doing this because I'm tired of environments where cruelty is mistaken for strength. That's a lot to risk for a stranger. Perhaps, Marcus agreed. Or perhaps it's the only thing worth risking anything for, the fight. When the moment of truth arrives, all preparation meets reality. But what if the real fight isn't the physical confrontation everyone expects? What unfolded in that prison yard would become legend, not for the violence, but for what Marcus revealed about true strength. Keep reading and subscribe, because this chapter demonstrates that courage takes forms we rarely recognize. The recreation yard at 2 p.m. looked different than Marcus remembered from his observations. A makeshift boxing ring had been constructed using rope and corner posts scavenged from equipment storage. Guards lined the perimeter, their presence more supervisory than protective. They'd seen these challenges before war. Institutional memory classified them as pressure release valves. Better a controlled fight than simmering violence. Marcus walked to the ring in his standard prison-issue workout clothes. No special preparation, no theatrical entrance. Rourke was already there, stripped to the waist, his muscular torso covered in prison tattoos that told stories of violence and allegiance. He shadowboxed, each punch cutting air with professional precision. The yard had filled. Perhaps 200 inmates formed a crowd around the ring, their excitement palpable. Entertainment was rare, violence was common. The combination created event status. Jefferson stood at ringside, having insisted on being Marcus's corner, despite having no relevant experience. It's not too late to back out, he whispered urgently. Marcus shook his head. It's exactly too late. That's what makes it interesting. A guard acting as informal referee, a man named Morrison who'd been doing this for 15 years, called both fighters to the center. 3 rounds, 3 minutes each. You go down and stay down 10 seconds, it's over. Medical gets called if I see serious damage. We clear? Both men nodded. Touch gloves. Rourke extended his fist with predatory confidence. Marcus met it, noting the barely controlled eagerness in the bigger man's eyes. This was Rourke's stage, his moment to reassert dominance. Marcus understood that maintaining composure would be his first victory. The bell, actually a metal cup struck against a pole, rang. Rourke advanced immediately, using his reach advantage to establish range. 2 jabs snapped out, testing Marcus's reflexes. Marcus slipped one, absorbed the second on his forearm. The impact sent shock waves through old bones, but his stance remained solid. The prison bully pressed forward, throwing combinations designed to overwhelm. Left hook, right cross, left hook again. Marcus gave ground strategically, using the ring's space covering vital areas. One punch slipped through his guard, catching his ribs. Pain bloomed, sharp and clarifying. "Stand and fight," someone yelled from the crowd. But Marcus understood something the crowd didn't. This wasn't about trading punches. Every second he remained upright redefined what was possible. Every punch he absorbed and remained standing demonstrated resilience Rourke couldn't knock down. 90 seconds into the first round, Rourke's frustration became visible. He'd landed solid shots, enough to drop most opponents. Yet Marcus continued moving, continued standing, his defensive positioning textbook perfect despite the punishment. "You just gonna run?" Rourke taunted, breathing harder than expected. Marcus didn't respond verbally. He simply maintained his guard, his eyes steady, watching Rourke with analytical calm. The bigger man was strong, skilled, but he was accustomed to quick victories. Extended effort was unfamiliar territory. The round ended. Marcus returned to his corner, where Jefferson dabbed water on his face. "You're getting murdered out there," Jefferson said desperately. "No," Marcus replied quietly. "I'm learning his rhythm. Watch round 2. The bell rang again. This time, when Rourke charged forward, Marcus met him differently. He still gave ground, still defended more than attacked. But now he threw occasional counters. Not to damage, but to disrupt. A jab to interrupt Rourke's combination. A body shot when the prison bully dropped his guard. None of Marcus's punches hurt Rourke significantly. That wasn't their purpose. Their purpose was communication. "I'm still here. I'm still thinking. You haven't broken me." 2 minutes into round 2, something shifted in the crowd's energy. The anticipated destruction hadn't materialized. Instead, they were witnessing endurance. Some began cheering for Marcus, not because they liked him, but because his resistance represented something they'd forgotten was possible. Rourke felt the shift. His punches came faster, harder, but also wilder. Efficiency gave way to emotion. He wanted Marcus down, wanted the restoration of his narrative. Marcus survived round 2, the revelation. What happens when physical dominance meets mental discipline? When brute force encounters strategic resilience? The final round would reveal truths about power that neither fighter expected. Stay with us. Subscribe now, because what Marcus accomplished transcended victory and defeat. Round 3 began with Rourke visibly frustrated. Sweat poured down his face, his breathing labored. 8 years of dominance through overwhelming force hadn't prepared him for an opponent who refused to be overwhelmed. Marcus, meanwhile, hurt everywhere. His ribs screamed with each breath. His left eye was swelling. Blood trickled from a cut above his right eyebrow. Yet his mind remained crystalline, observing patterns, calculating probabilities. 30 seconds into the round, Rourke changed tactics. He stopped trying for the knockout and began targeting Marcus's body systematically. Liver shots, kidney punches, attacks designed to break will rather than consciousness. Each landed blow was agony. Marcus absorbed them, centered his breathing, and stayed upright. At the 90-second mark, something remarkable happened. Rourke threw a massive overhand right, the kind of punch designed to end fights. Marcus saw it coming, stepped inside the arc, and caught Rourke in a clinch. The bigger man's momentum carried them both against the ropes. For 3 seconds, they stood pressed together, both gasping for air. In that moment of proximity, Marcus spoke quietly. Words meant only for Rourke. "You're tired. I'm hurt. Neither of us wins by continuing, but we both learn by finishing with respect." Rourke tried to push away, but Marcus held the clinch a moment longer. "I'm not your enemy," Marcus continued. "I'm the first person in 8 years who's told you the truth, that strength alone isn't leadership." The referee separated them. "Break it up!" They returned to fighting distance. Rourke's eyes held something new. Not quite confusion, not quite recognition. Something between the two. The final 90 seconds unfolded with strange choreography. Rourke continued punching, but the murderous intensity had diminished. Marcus continued defending, but also began talking between exchanges. "You maintain control through fear." Marcus slipped a jab. "But fear creates resentment." He absorbed a body shot, grunted. "And resentment creates instability." "Shut up!" Rourke threw a combination. "You could lead differently." Marcus covered, took 2 shots on his arms. "Create loyalty instead of terror." The bell rang. Morrison stepped between them. "That's it. 3 rounds. The crowd erupted, not with the bloodlust satisfaction of watching someone destroyed, but with something else. Respect, perhaps? Curiosity about what they'd witnessed. Marcus stood, battered but upright. He hadn't been knocked down. By the terms of his challenge, he'd won something nobody expected. Rourke stared across the ring, chest heaving. For 8 years, he'd been unchallengeable. Now, this older man had survived 3 rounds and somehow made it feel like Rourke had lost something intangible. Morrison raised Marcus's hand. Webb stays upright. By prison yard rules, that's a statement. The crowd's noise swelled. Jefferson rushed into the ring, supporting Marcus, who suddenly felt every injury at once. But through the pain, Marcus caught Rourke's eye and nodded, a gesture of acknowledgement, fighter to fighter. Rourke didn't return the nod, but he didn't look away either. Later in the infirmary, as a medical technician treated Marcus's wounds, Jefferson couldn't contain his amazement. You did it. You actually lasted 3 rounds. Marcus winced as antiseptic cleaned his eyebrow cut. I lasted, but the real test begins now. What do you mean? I earned the right to ask 3 questions. Whether Rourke answers them honestly, whether anything changes, that's the actual challenge. Marcus closed his eyes, exhausted. The fight was just the introduction. The conversation is the real work. Jefferson shook his head in wonder. You're either the craziest person I've ever met or the bravest. I can't decide which. Maybe both, Marcus allowed. Maybe that's what change requires. That evening, a message came through Jefferson. Rourke would honor the agreement. Tomorrow during recreation, Marcus could ask his 3 questions, publicly, in front of the same crowd that had witnessed the fight. Marcus spent that night preparing not his body, but his questions. Words, he understood, could strike deeper than any punch. And unlike physical injuries, the right words could heal instead of harm. The questions, what can words accomplish that fists cannot? When does dialogue become more powerful than dominance? Marcus's 3 questions would challenge 8 years of established order. Subscribe and keep reading. This chapter will show you how asking the right questions changes everything. The yard's energy the next afternoon was different from fight day. Anticipation remained, but curiosity had replaced bloodlust. Men gathered not to see violence, but to witness something unprecedented. Rourke honoring an agreement he'd never had to honor before. The prison bully sat at a table in the yard's center, his lieutenants arranged around him like a protective barrier. Marcus approached alone, moving stiffly from yesterday's beating, but with that same measured calm. His left eye bore purple testimony to Rourke's power, yet he carried himself without visible defeat. You came, Rourke said as Marcus stopped before the table. We had an agreement, Marcus replied simply. A subtle shift in Rourke's expression, perhaps respect, perhaps irritation. 3 questions. That was the deal. Ask them and get it over with. Marcus remained standing. The crowd pressed closer, straining to hear. Guards watched from their positions, uncertain what to make of this evolution. My first question, Marcus began, his voice carrying despite not being raised. What convinced you that fear was the only way to lead? Rourke's jaw tightened. That's a bullshit question. No, Marcus said quietly. It's the foundation question. Every leadership style originates from some belief system. I'm asking about yours. For a long moment, Rourke stared at Marcus with barely contained hostility. The yard held its breath. Then surprisingly, Rourke spoke. You want the truth? Fear works. I came in here 12 years ago, skinny kid who didn't know anything. Got beaten, extorted, made into someone's property. When I finally got big enough, strong enough, I swore nobody would ever make me a victim again. Fear protects. Fear creates space. That's not philosophy, that's survival. Marcus nodded slowly, absorbing this. So your leadership style emerged from trauma, from victimization. You became what you feared to prevent being victimized again. Don't psychoanalyze me, old man. I'm not, Marcus assured him. I'm understanding context. It matters. He paused. Second question. In 8 years of leading through fear, have you created anything permanent? Built any relationship that would survive your absence? Rourke's lieutenant stirred uncomfortably. The question cut deeper than insult. It probed existential territory. "I've created order," Rourke growled. "Before me, C block was chaos. I brought structure." "Structure built on one person's physical dominance," Marcus observed. "What happens when you're transferred, or released, or when someone younger, stronger, inevitably challenges you successfully? Does your structure survive, or does it collapse into the chaos you originally replaced?" The yard's silence deepened. Marcus had articulated what many had thought, but none dared voice: that Rourke's empire rested on the most temporary foundation possible. "That's two questions," Rourke said tightly. "Yes," Marcus agreed. "My third question is this. If you could lead differently, through earned respect rather than imposed fear, through creating genuine loyalty rather than manufactured compliance, would you want to?" Rourke stood abruptly, his chair scraping concrete. For 3 heartbeats, violence hung in the air. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed, a sound without humor but with something else. Recognition, perhaps, or exhaustion. "You think you're clever," Rourke said, "coming in here, surviving 3 rounds, asking your philosophical questions. You think you've exposed some weakness." "No," Marcus replied, meeting Rourke's eyes steadily. "I think I've identified an opportunity. Your current approach requires constant vigilance, constant enforcement, constant violence. It's exhausting. There's another way, more sustainable, more humane, ultimately more effective. And you're going to teach me." Rourke's tone dripped sarcasm. "No," Marcus said. "I'm going to offer collaboration. You have positional authority. I have strategic thinking. Together, we could transform C Block from a fear-based hierarchy into something resembling community." The proposition hung in the air like smoke. Rourke's lieutenants looked at each other, uncertain. The crowd murmured with confusion and interest. Rourke stepped closer to Marcus until they were face to face. "Why, Bawa? Why do you care about changing anything? You're just passing through like everyone else." Marcus held his ground. "Because I'm tired of places where cruelty is mistaken for strength. Because that young man you were choking deserves better. Because you deserve better than spending whatever time you have left here maintaining something that exhausts you." He paused. "And because I believe people can change, even in places designed to prevent change." Rourke searched Marcus's face, looking for deception, finding only weary sincerity. "You're serious, completely. You're insane." "Possibly," Marcus allowed, "but I lasted 3 rounds with you. That should count for something." The alliance, when enemies become allies, when power structures begin to shift, that's when true transformation faces its greatest test. What Marcus and Rourke attempted next would either revolutionize C Block or destroy them both. Don't miss this turning point. Subscribe now because this chapter reveals how systemic change actually happens. The meeting took place 3 days later in a storage room rarely used by guards. Marcus, Rourke, Jefferson, and 2 of Rourke's most trusted lieutenants, Grinder and a quiet man named Santos, gathered in tense proximity. "I still think this is stupid," Grinder muttered, arms crossed over his massive chest. "Your objection is noted," Rourke said, his tone suggesting the objection carried little weight. He turned to Marcus. "You have the floor, old man. Sell us on this community transformation bullshit." Marcus had spent those 3 days preparing, not with speeches, but with observations and data. He'd talked with dozens of inmates, asking questions, listening to complaints and hopes. Now he produced a notebook filled with careful handwriting. "C Block has 243 inmates," Marcus began. "Currently, resources flow through one central authority, Rourke's organization. This creates efficiency but also bottlenecks, resentment, and constant pressure on enforcement. Approximately 30% of inmates actively resent the current system. Another 40% comply out of fear rather than acceptance. That leaves only 30% who genuinely support the existing structure." Santos leaned forward with interest. "Where'd you get those numbers?" "Conversations, observation, extrapolation." Marcus flipped a page. "The current system requires Rourke to personally manage or oversee roughly 80% of significant decisions. That's unsustainable. It's also why he's exhausted." Rourke's expression flickered, surprise that his exhaustion was visible, irritation that it had been identified. What I'm proposing, Marcus continued, is distributed authority. Instead of one hierarchy, we create specialized groups, commissary management, conflict resolution, educational programs, physical training. Each group has autonomy within defined parameters. Rourke transitions from dictator to coordinator. That's weak, Grinder objected. You're asking Donnie to give up power. No, Marcus corrected. I'm suggesting he multiply it. Right now, Rourke's power extends as far as his fists and fear can reach. Under a distributed model, his power extends through people who choose to implement shared goals because they're invested in outcomes. Jefferson, who'd been silent, spoke up. Marcus, that sounds great in theory, but this is prison. People don't cooperate because they want to. They cooperate because they are forced to. Are you cooperating with me because I forced you? Marcus asked. Jefferson paused. No, but you're different. Why am I different? Because you treat people like they matter, like their ideas have value. We call them. Exactly, Marcus said. Now imagine an entire block operating on that principle. Imagine Rourke's leadership being defined not by who he can beat in a fight, but by how effectively he facilitates collective improvement. Rourke had been listening intently. Now he spoke. Let's say I buy this fairy tale. What's the first step? Marcus turned to a new page. We start with the commissary system. Currently, you control it through force. 30% fees, complex debt structures, punishment for late payment. We restructure it as a cooperative. Fair prices, transparent accounting, shared benefits. Those who participate receive advantages. Those who don't simply don't benefit. No punishment, just exclusion from collective goods. That cuts my profit, Rourke observed. Your current profit, Marcus agreed. But it eliminates enforcement costs, reduces resentment, and creates buy-in. You'd make less per transaction, but experience far less resistance. Net outcome might actually be better. Santos nodded slowly. It's like switching from taxation to voluntary subscription. People feel differently about paying when it's their choice. Precisely, Marcus looked at Rourke. I'm not asking you to become a different person. I'm asking you to become a more effective version of who you are. Your strength remains valuable, but deployed strategically rather than constantly. Grinder shook his head. First sign of weakness, someone challenges Donnie, then everything collapses. Which is why we phase implementation, Marcus replied. We start with low risk,